Well, I mean, the 4 kids said, "Mom, you and Dad? You guys were so young and fun. Can't you be fun again? We're still fun. What are you talking about?"
What made you decide that this was the moment to tell your story on screen, especially after the book? You know, what was it that made you say this is the time and I want to talk more about my life?
I've always felt that it should be told on screen because the book itself is it's written in words, in English, as opposed to telling the story in American Sign Language, where it's perfectly made for the screen, it's visual. And for her to be able to direct it with a deft lens would be an entirely different experience than reading the book. And I know that she was the perfect person to direct the film.
I did have one question. Whenever I had met with American Masters, I was like, wow, this is an incredible opportunity. I feel like, I knew the story that I wanted to tell right away. It's one that's been growing in me my whole entire life. I've always admired Marlee. I've been able to see her, and she's the first time that I saw somebody look like me and talk like me on the screen. And I felt like I've always known the story, but I said, I can't say yes because I just have one question. Does Marlee know that you're asking me? And then I was like, oh, it's her idea. I was like, oh, all right. Okay.
Did anything surprise either of you about the process of making the movie, or did you learn anything?
What surprised me was not so much a surprise because Marlee is an open book. It's all already out there in concept, but I didn't think that that was a con to the film that we were making. I thought it was going to be a great opportunity. I wasn't thinking so much about what has been said and being like, oh, this happened. We're gonna have some salacious intention to try to we're gonna push her to say things that she hasn't said before. We didn't want to do that. What I wanted was for Marlee to own her own story and reframe it in a way that I've always felt it and how I've always seen it, as a deaf woman who shares her experience, who has experienced so many things like her. To see the way that people spoke to her and the words that they used to describe her and the assumptions that had been made about Marlee's experience, the weight that she's always had to carry, she's always had to educate hearing people who just sit there and say, oh, Marlee, so what's it like to be deaf? What does that mean? Tell me. Captions? What? What are all these things? Wow, the weight of that, I felt like I could see that, and I wanted to be there with her and carry it with her. I wanted her to reclaim and define the story for herself. And that was just not surprising, but it was revealing just how much stories can change depending on who's perceiving them, depending on who the story's for, depending on who's telling the story. Really, that's altering the narrative itself. And it's very powerful.
Shoshannah, there was nothing surprising about her work. I knew how she would frame the entire film. And in all honesty, maybe one or two things that surprised me were when I watched the film, which was my daughter, my oldest, who never really saw how it is. I never had a chance to see how it affected her. To see her mother go through the pain. She felt the pain and how she was revealing on camera. And as a mother, seeing my child expose herself in that way, it hits me every time. And then my granddaughter, and the way she looked at me, that was extremely powerful. Those are the two things. And my two brothers' comments, that validated, and I had to hear them finally say that. The little things that mean a lot to me, that's what surprised me.
I think something that was really interesting to me about the movie was looking at what you wanted to see in Hollywood happen, and then Troy's Oscar being such a big moment. Now it's been a few years since that, and we're back at Sundance where that all started. I guess, like, how do you reflect on that moment now, several years later? Is there anything you'd like to see continued to have a momentum for change? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that moment now?
In all honesty, there's still no change. There's always like, yes, you've done it. Yay. And I always say to myself, yes, but I know it's always temporary. It's always a temporary celebration, at least for our community. You know, they say, oh, well, let's wait a few more years. A couple of years? 10 years? 15 years? Oh, okay, and then another person. And we, yay. I think that's what probably will happen. Coda was several years ago. And now here we are, several years ago.
I think there's one sentence in the film that I think a lot of people missed, is that Marlee has not worked since Coda. How is that possible? I think the system is made and built by people that live a different experience than we do, and they expect people like us to somehow figure it out, somehow figure out how to navigate the system. And they're like, look, you did it. But the system is still exactly the same.
It's almost like we expect it, and I'm tired of it. And that needs to change. I mean, we are celebrating, and it's great. Great. Now let's do it again. Now. Not waiting for it any longer.
We pitched a lot of projects together. This is not the first time that Marlee and I have tried to work together. Just PBS, because it's public television, they were like, yeah, let's do it. They were willing to take a risk that many networks who really rely on money, who really rely on deals, don't take that risk. Like, a lot of times Marlee and I are pitching projects and we hear people say, oh, nope, we have one deaf character on this animated TV show. It's a half hour. And then it's like, she's deaf, she doesn't sign, but we can't do another deaf person, another deaf project.
There are so many stories, amazing stories. They run the gamut of them. And I say, look, there are hearing stories made by hearing people. There are deaf stories made by deaf people too, but they don't have to be that way too. They don't have to be entirely deaf. She's a writer. She runs the entire spectrum. She's a producer. She's a director. I'm an actor. I don't write, but yes, but I am also a producer. I direct. So, what are we waiting for? Why? We don't bite. We are as creative.
I think it depends on like what has been done. They're like, oh, this is the formula that makes money. Okay, 1 + 1 = 2. And that's how they make things and have made things. They think, you know, there's this character that's deaf, therefore we cast a deaf actor who looks like this at this specific age. There. But I think the world, like people, I think we're all smarter than that. I think that people really do love different things that haven't been done before. And so now everything is an opportunity. We have the opportunity to do something different. I think that audiences will respond. I think that's why Coda had such a huge success. But everyone's like, oh, we did Coda, we're done. You know? And for a business that is supposed to be about creativity, they're really not being creative at all.
Storytelling is the heart of it all. We have plenty of stories.
I don't know.
Plenty of them.